fun embellished hoop earrings. It's also a great design to use on wine charms. So whether you're using hoop earrings or wine charms, it's going to be the exact same steps. Go ahead and check out the material list below and we'll get started. We're going to start with our 11 seed beads and 3 colors of crystals. You can use a 2 or 3 millimeter crystal. And of course I have my hoop earring here and a thread and needle. Then the thread that I have is a black thread here, but you can use any color that matches your beads. I'm using the black because it shows up better in the video, so it's easier to see. We're going to start with our hoop earring here. And I'm going to take my needle and thread and just go around my hoop earring and tie a knot. So I'm just going to tie my thread onto the earring. And when I tie it on, I want to make sure that I'm tying it around the thick part here down at the bottom. You have the top, the mechanism here that goes through your ear. And you want to make sure that you avoid tying it onto there because you want to build your design down at the bottom on this thicker part. I'm going to go around again here, just tie this a little tighter. Oops, and you can see that it's really easy to get it caught on that part at the top there. And you don't want to do that because you want to make sure that you're keeping your thread down at the bottom. I'm going to just tie this again to make it tighter so that it doesn't come undone. So here my thread is now tied and anchored onto my hoop. This is going to slide around on you, and that's fine, just as long as you keep it away from the top part here. You just don't want to get it caught up there. I'm going to pick up 2 of my 11-ohs, and I'm going to let those fall down close to my ear wire. And then I'm going to take my needle and thread and go around and under my hoop earring. Oops. Going under my hoop earring. And then I'm going to go back through the second 11-oh that I picked up. And when you pull these close to your hoop earring, you can see I have the hoop sitting on my finger. So my beads aren't going underneath it or towards the inside here. I'm just holding them in place on the outside of my earring. And I've got my first and my second bead here that I picked up. I'm going to go through the second bead, and I want to come out between the first and second bead. And then when I pull my thread, that will sort of twist and reposition that 11-oh so that the hole is now facing directly up away from the hoop. So my second bead here, I took my thread and I went under the hoop and back through that bead. And now I have my thread and the hole of the bead coming out directly from the hoop. And I want to be able to turn this hoop to the side and look down and see the holes of my beads. I'm going to continue adding beads. This is just using a Burke stitch. So I'm going to pick up one more bead, and I'm going to go under my hoop. And again, I'm letting my hoop rest on my finger here so that as I pull my thread, the bead that I added stays on the outside of my ear wire. I'm going to take my needle and thread and go back through the 11-oh so that my needle is coming out between the bead that I just picked up and the previous bead. And then when I pull that thread, it will turn that bead to the side so that when I look down, I can see the holes in my beads. And I'm going to add 9 beads in total like this. So just one after the other here, picking up a bead, going around the hoop earring, and back up through the bead. Picking up a bead through the hoop earring and through the bead that I just picked up to turn it to its side. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so I need a few more here. And you can add, you don't have to do 9, you could do less, you could do more, but you should have an odd number so that you have a center. If you have a center, you'll be able to have that one centerpiece that hangs longer, and it'll give you a nice sort of sharp diamond or kind of triangle down here at the bottom. If you have even, then you'll have 2 at the bottom. It just won't be as sharp here at the bottom. Let's see, how many do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need 2 more. Okay, 8 and 1 more here. So now that I've added my last one, I'm going to pull that thread tight. And it's okay if it's not perfectly centered, because you can move this. It shouldn't be so tight that you can't take these beads and sort of slide them on the hoop earring. So I want to put this, I'm going to slide it so it's roughly in the center there. And then I can continue here and start adding my decoration down at the bottom. I'm going to start here on the end, coming out of this 11-0 that I just, the last 11-0 that I added. And my thread should be coming out the top of that 11-0 or the bottom, depending on how you look at it. And I'm going to start with my first piece of fringe. So in this piece of fringe, I have 3 seed beads, and then I have my crystals. So you can adjust the length of your fringe. I'm going to do this one to match my sample here. I'm going to start with 3 seed beads. So I'm going to pick up 3 seed beads, and then the pattern of my crystals, and I'm going to pick up an 11-0 in between. So I've got my A crystal and an 11-0, my B crystal and an 11-0, and then my C crystal. And then I will need an 11-0 for the end here. So I've just strung these beads. I'm going to pick up one 11-0 for the end, and then I'm going to go back through all those beads that I picked up and go back through the 11-0. That's part of that brick stitch on my earring. So you'll notice here that I pick up the last 11-0, and then I go back through my beads starting with this last bicone. And then that leaves that 11-0 here at the end as like a stopper to hold all those beads on. So I'm coming out the top, coming out this 11-0 here. That's part of my brick stitch between the 11-0 and my hoop earring. I'm going to pick up one 11-0, and I'm going to go down through the 11-0 here to the left on my brick stitch. I'm going to pick up another 11-0, and I'm going to go up through the 11-0 to the right, the one where I just added the fringe. So just go through that bead again. And then I'm going to go down through the 11-0 on the left, skipping that bead that I picked up. So I'm just letting that bead that I picked up just kind of hang out. So I'm going from one 11-0 to the other 11-0 on the brick stitch. So now I should be coming out through the second 11-0 in on the brick stitch. And I'm going to add my next length of fringe. I'm going to make these pieces of fringe longer as I go until I get to the center. So here I started with 3 seed beads and then my crystals. So here I'm going to do 5 seed beads and then my crystals. So I've got 5 seed beads and I've got my crystal and my 11-0, or yep, crystal 11-0, crystal 11-0, my crystal, and I need an 11-0 here for the end. And then I'm going to take my needle and go back through my beads, starting with that bicone at the end, and go through all your beads, including the 11-0 on the brick stitch. And now I'm going to add an 11-0 here, pick up an 11-0, and go through the 11-0 here, just to the left of the one where I'm coming out. So the next 11-0 to the left on my brick stitch, pick up another 11-0, and then go up through the 11-0 on the right. Skip the 11-0 I picked up and go down through the 11-0 to the left on my brick stitch. And now I'm in position here to add another length of my fringe. So I'm going to continue making these longer until I get to the center, and then I'm going to make them shorter. And here's my sample. So here, my pattern here at the very end is always the same. And my seed beads here, I've got 3, and then my pattern, I have 5, then 7, then 9, then 11 here in the center, and then I go backwards. So I have 9, 7, 5, and 3. So I'm just mirroring that with the 11 seed beads here being the longest one at the center. So we're going to continue here, adding our fringe and our little extra seed beads here at the top on the brick stitch until we get to the other end. And then we'll continue and fill this section in here some more. Once you've added all of your fringe here, you should have an earring that looks like this. We have the hoop earring and our fringe, and then you should have this sort of like a ruffle or embellishment here at the top of 16 seed beads. You have 8 on the top and 8 on the bottom. And these are the seed beads that we picked up when we went from one 11-0 to the next to create the fringe. And we picked up 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. And these seed beads should be sitting sort of above the other seed beads, and they're facing the opposite direction. So the holes are actually facing the other way compared to all your other beads. So we've got 8 at the top and 8 at the bottom. So here in this next step, we're just going to work with those 16 beads. So we've got 8 and 8. So when I refer to the top, I'll just be referring to these ones here at the top that are at the inside of the hoop, and the ones at the bottom here just below that. My needle and thread are coming out of this last 11-0 on my brick stitch. I added my last fringe here, and I went up through that 11-0 on my brick stitch. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working with those 16 seed beads and build this up a little bit. I'm going to go through the first 8-0 on the top, or sorry, my first 11-0. I have eight of them, but my first 11-0 here on the top. And then I'm going to go down through the 11-0 in the brick stitch right next to it. So that's a second 11-0 in my brick stitch. And I'm going to go through the 11-0 next to it on the bottom. So I'm going through that, through that 11-0, the first 11-0 on the bottom. So now I'm coming out with my thread, just kind of coming out facing away from my project. I'm going to pick up 111 and I'm going to go through the first 11 on the top row of my 11 here. And that just adds one little seed bead to the end. So I'm coming out of that 11 here, the first 11 on my top row. So now from this point forward, I'm just going to be working with these 2 rows of 8 seed beads. I'm going to pick up 111 and I'm going to go through the second seed bead on the bottom. And then I'm going to pick up an 11 and I'm going to go through the third seed bead on the top. So I'm just going at a diagonal, adding 11 here between these two rows. So I'm going to pick up another 11 and on the bottom here I'm going to go through the fourth seed bead, pick up an 11 and go through the fifth seed bead here on the top. Oops, be careful not to get your fringe caught in there. And pick up another 11 and then go through the sixth seed bead on the bottom row. Pick up another 11 and go through the seventh seed bead here on the top. And pick up another 11 and go through the eighth on the bottom. So we're just kind of zigzagging back and forth, adding those 11s in there. Now I'm coming out through the 11 here on my bottom row through that last 11. I'm going to pick up one of my 11s and go through the top, through that first 8 on the top row. And then I add a little 11 to the end of the rows here like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of sneak back through these beads in the opposite direction, and that will straighten out those beads that I just added in the center. So I'm coming out through my first 11 here at the very end. I'm all the way on the right, and I'm going to go down through that seed bead that I added on my last row, on my last pass through, and then through the second seed bead on the bottom. And I'm going to go up through the second seed bead in the center, and through the third seed bead at the top, through the next center bead, and through the fourth bead on the bottom, up through the next center bead, and through the fifth bead here at the top, down through the next center bead, and through the sixth bead here at the bottom, up through the center bead, through the seventh on the top, and down through the center bead. Oops. And then through the eighth on the bottom. And as I do that, you should see that the center beads that you added between your 2 rows of 8 have sort of straightened out. And there we go. So this is essentially this is almost like a little right angle weave here that we did. If you're familiar with right angle weave, you might notice that it looks like that. But I just did it in a little bit different way here. So we added it diagonally, and then we came back through and took our thread through the other direction to kind of straighten those beads out. So now you are now you are all done with your steps here. Coming out on the end, I'm just going to take my needle and thread through this bead at the very end, and I should be back to the beginning here where I first tied my knot and added my thread. So I can do that again here. I can tie these ends together, and it's a really convenient place to burn that off or cut it off right there. So now, now that you've done one, you're going to make another one, and you want to make sure that your next bead or your next hoop earring, you orient the other way. So you can see here on this pair that I have, the top here, the side that has this embellishment or buildup here at the top of the fringe, you want to make sure that on the side that you do that on is opposite on your different hoop earrings, on both your hoops. So here I have my hoop earring here facing one direction, here I have it facing the other. So you just want to make sure that you have them oriented that way so that when you wear them, the embellished side is facing outward on both of your ears.